Do you have the video to play? It's not.
It should
Oh,
be
there
on.
it is. Cool, it's on now.
All right, welcome everyone to DeFi Standard. You got Mickey B. Fresh here, and I got
PattyXRP. Sorry.
there he is.
I got distracted by the music because I got a delay sitting on the browser.
Welcome, Lantern. Happy birthday, Lantern. Today is Lantern's birthday, so everyone congratulate him.
Yes, happy birthday, Lantern. Helps us out a ton with some of the deep dive research.
Yes, Lantern is the man. Thank you, Michael Redgrave. Very much appreciated. So today, big day on multiple fronts here. So we got the SEC thing going on with Deaton, and then we got news of PolySign, which came out. So it's been a while since we heard anything from PolySign. So today was the first tweet in almost a year. Oh, and before I forget, withcharity.org is the creator of our awesome intro. So thank you, Dale. Great job on that. Everyone's loving it.
Yeah, absolutely love that.
Yep, good choice on the music, too. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's start off first here, Patty, with what's going on with the SEC, because that's on everyone's mind. So John Deaton made a motion to intervene. Now, that was accepted, and he was able to write his arguments with 188 pages and then 36 pages. Now, Ripple responded, which they willingly want, the community to intervene. And Movants is what they're calling us. Interesting word. I think it was news for many of us. Move closer to the mic. All right, I'll turn the mic up. All right. It's always something with the sound. So.
You good?
Yeah, I think we're good. Everyone could hear. I just had to turn the mic up a little. All right. So, back to where we were. So, the SEC is trying to then put their response letter in, which was pretty harsh, and it was kind of all over the place. They were saying first that they don't want to answer the digital security question here, Patty. And when John Deaton in the clubhouse, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it in there, but our Patty was in there. So what was your thoughts from hearing John Deaton on that in the clubhouse?
Yeah, so I left feeling really good about the situation that we're all currently in right now. John Deaton gave his opinion on just kind of the long-term course of this case, which was interesting to hear. And he basically thinks it's going to be extremely hard for the SEC to argue in court that basically every sale or transaction of XRP in the entire world is a security. And one of the, he made this interesting comparison all the way back to the Howey case in the 1940s, where it'd be saying that every XRP transaction and every XRP token is a security would be akin to saying that the Howie company sold some oranges to this one person. Some kid went and bought those oranges and then was selling them at a stand on the side of the road. And then basically, you eat the orange and you just ate a security. So, I mean, as much as ridiculous as that seems, like, relating it to XRP, I think it's very true, because we all know, like, XRP has been traded, close to $1 trillion in volume over the course of its life. And that means a lot of XRP has been traded around and exchanged hands and everything. And that's completely, a void from Ripple at this point. Like, they have nothing to do with that. So, like, it being used as a medium of exchange, like as a tipping tool, people accept payment for their wages or for their labor rather in XRP. So it's like, we receive XRP from Coil subscribers. It's like, how is that a security? It's someone that's offering payment for like us putting out content. Exactly. So I just like that part is going to be really hard to argue for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, they're starting to say that the oranges are still securities that went around and then made orange juice. So now orange juice is still a security. Like, in the case recently, though, that Tenera argued against Telegram, I don't know if he was part of the Telegram, but he was part of Kin. But in the Telegram case, the judge said even those Gram tokens that were out there already, after they sold them, would not been securities. So how can an asset like XRP, that's already out there in the wild for 8 years, been trading almost $1 trillion in volume, be a security? So there's no way that could be a security right now. The question I have is he able to avoid, they seem like they want to avoid answering that question, but they put it in the beginning of the amended claim. It says right there on page 1, they're calling XRP a digital security, but they don't want to acknowledge that they did that. They're like, the case isn't about that. But you know what? It is about that. And I expect the judge to come in here and hammer them. I mean, they're flip-flopping all around on their response. I mean, that thing was a mess. That letter they sent back. So I don't know about you. I think that thing's going to get hammered by the judge. I really do.
I don't like, they're not going to be able to, they can't dance around forever. At some point, that question has to be answered. And that the Ripple lawyers are definitely going to hammer that home, as well as like, if, John Deaton is let in to represent XRP holders as a limited party where he can provide, facts and evidence to the case, then, I think he's going to hammer down on that point as well, based on what he was saying in his Clubhouse chat today.
Yeah, I agree. So I think this was a big difference in an argument from like the memorandums of understanding. Like that discovery case, I think it's very different from what's going on right here, because that was just arguing discovery of foreign transactions, and they can't even use Brad and Chris's foreign transactions. So, and there's no case precedent with that, where this is actually the intervention of the community. So the question is, do we get full in there as basically a third party? I mean, I think that would be pushing it a little to have now adding a party, but I think permissive into the courts and this case as Movance would be something that would be powerful. And so let's talk a little about his bear trap that he set here for the SEC. Great. So you did a good job explaining this beforehand. So what was the bear trap and that he set basically for the SEC that was expecting them to say in this letter?
Yeah, exactly. So everyone that's been following this case and, John Deaton's Twitter account, as well as his crypto law Twitter account, they've been extremely critical of the SEC, calling them out for corruption. Obviously, we know about all these transactions that happen between law firms, Bitcoin and Ethereum mining firms that Hinman and Clayton are associated with. So basically, he wanted to sound off on Twitter so that the SEC would bring that up in their response letter to like his petition to get into the case or, the lawsuit. And basically they did. So a couple things they did. They called him out saying basically that, he's doing all this for Twitter clout and to advance his own needs. Makes a ton of sense that this guy's done all this research and, posted a massive, legal document to the court and everything just to get some Twitter followers. That sounds like a really great use of your time. And then the other thing that they tried to say is that he's leading some crusade against the SEC with a bunch of just pissed off people, and that he shouldn't be listened to. So what that's going to do now is the judge, if when he gets to be heard, which I believe he said his next like response could be on, I want to say due on May 17th. So we could find out about this later this month. And basically the judge is going to say, okay, well, they're saying these things about you. Is this true? And why did you think the things that you said? And basically he's going to be able to introduce that information to the judge and say, look, these guys are tied in with the Ethereum Alliance. They're tied in with, IPOs for Bitcoin mining firms. They were getting paid by the Simpson and Thatcher law firm while they were at the SEC in like a pension capacity. But they were also giving, officially non-official rulings on Bitcoin and Ethereum, which the SEC has retracted in this case, essentially, by saying, oh, those aren't official statements. So I don't know how anybody could ever believe anything an SEC director, commissioner ever says in the future, because clearly they're not held responsible for anything that they're going to say, like in whatever they want to call an unofficial capacity. So, I mean, I just think kind of it's laid out perfectly now. He's going to be able to bring evidence as to like, what is these kind of conflicts of interest looks like. And then the judge will be able to deliberate on that. So that was his whole reasoning behind being hyper aggressive online and calling them out, is to give him an easy in to presenting that information. So, I think we see some of his like military background here with, some like art of war playing going on.
Yeah, that was really great strategy. I mean, the fact that they acknowledged it then gives him the opportunity then present that in front of the court. I just think that's great, because it would have been difficult, and we all want the corruption exposed, don't we? So this is kind of a mastermind tactic, what he did, to allow them to bring that in now, because he's banking on the fact that they already let him in to intervene. Now it's like, can he be heard? He went this far. I don't think the SEC said anything that is going to allow them not to come in now. I mean, they tried to say, hey, there were these civil cases that were brought to Ripple, so we're going to have them involved in now too? And it's like, what? There were 3 people that claimed they lost a couple hundred XRP. I mean, that's a big difference from 16,000 people on a petition and 4,000 people on this call right now. So it does look like John Deaton gave us the opportunity to expose, like XRP Lava says, expose them. So this is the best way to expose them, because he'll be able to do it actually in the court, and he'll be able to show, hey, this guy Hinman was part of this Simpson and Thatcher law company. He gives clarity to Ethereum. He goes right back to them, and they're on the Ethereum Foundation. So it really, the optics alone don't look good. But the question is, what else did Clayton say? Did Clayton think he was going to be subpoenaed right when he left the SEC and went to Apollo? So he could have said all types of things behind the scenes there, not expecting himself to get subpoenaed. The last thing he probably thought was he was going to get subpoenaed. He thought this was probably going to all come down and crash onto Ripple. And in the end, this might turn out to be the best thing that Clayton did for us. I don't think that's the reason why he did it, though. I think he did it to try to bury Ripple and have the community flip on Ripple and do the opposite. And instead, the opposite of that is happening. Everyone's turning now on the SEC. Now we have the subpoenas to the SEC internal documents and their communications to the outside. So I've been saying for a while, Coinbase is listed XRP in 2019. Why did they list it in the beginning of 2019? Obviously, there were discussions between Coinbase and SEC. All that needs to be said there is something that puts XRP on the same level as Ethereum and Bitcoin, and Chris and Brad's thing is thrown right out. So that's all that's needed for that. What I don't like is that they're trying to skate around answering the XRP as a security right now question. That bothers me. All right. So
I mean, it's just kind of disgusting, because like they're harming investors at that point by still keeping that around when it's completely baseless. And honestly, I think like them kind of pulling that back at this point, may severely harm them from even getting Ripple at all, if, they brought this case forward in the wrong way and everything. So it seems like they're like really digging in their heels now, and they're trying to do whatever it takes to win, which, that's not great. That's not really what I want to see my tax dollars going to. I'd rather them do it on the merit of, what are the facts at hand, but they want to save face at this point. I think they've been thoroughly embarrassed so far through this whole process.
But you know what? They're sticking to their guns. I mean, they're not changing up what they're doing. I mean, they're just going at it in denial. How long will this go? And how long will Gensler let it go? I mean, there's those meetings on April 6th. People have talked about, is that going to be about Ripple? I mean, I'm sure it's on the discussion there. I don't think it's necessarily directly related to Ripple. And now when it comes to settlement, I hear a lot of people talking about settlement. Well, I don't see Ripple settling at this point. What are you going to settle on? They're not going to settle and agree that the escrowed XRP that comes out is a security and they have to disclose that with the SEC. They're not going to agree to that. They would have already. So I don't see them agreeing to that. Does the SEC budge, Patty? And do they concede certain things to settle at this point? That's really the question, right?
Yeah, so Deaton actually brought up a really good point regarding the MOUs and what that was a sign of to him. Mm-hmm. So he basically thought that them going overseas and, trying to, kind of scare a little bit, Ripple's foreign business partners, because nobody wants to hear from the regulator like, hey, you need to turn over some documents for us to give to the US. It's just not something you want to deal with. You don't want regulators in your ear and everything like that as a private business. And so he's thinking that they were hoping to basically get more favorable settlement for them by kind of like putting a strain on Ripple's business. So that could be a sign that maybe they're looking to settle since they're getting desperate with some of these tactics. But ultimately, I don't think the MOUs are, I don't think that's the most important point in this case. Like, if I had to guess, I think she'll probably allow it, the judge. However, though, the judge doesn't have to take that evidence into the actual hearings of the court. So she could allow them to do it and not limit the SEC in the future if there is a reason for them to have it, because it would establish some case law since there's just not a lot of, I think there's one case where this happened in the past with the SEC. So even if it does, if she allows the SEC to do it, don't get too worried about that. You would have thought they would have got this information before they filed the case. So, they would feel good about their chances. So at this point, it just seems like a last ditch effort. And XRP, Ripple's already had so many wins. Deaton's team has had some wins. So, if the SEC gets one, I wouldn't get too bothered by that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that has case law built behind it. I mean, I think it'll be in a limited capacity. I don't think she's going to give the SEC full access to all these things. They went behind the court's back here. So that is one thing to note. Somebody said that earlier. So we're getting a lot of questions here, Patty, about when's Flare going to be live? And
before
go ahead.
Do you mind if I add one more thing before we jump into that? So I kind of just remembered Deaton brought up a point where basically, apparently, One River Digital Asset Management or whatever, or asset management, that firm purchased over 1 billion Bitcoin, USD in Bitcoin, a couple months before this case was dropped against Ripple. And I was just looking at the prices of Ethereum and Bitcoin prior to, or when the SEC case dropped and what happened within the 2 weeks after. They basically both doubled in price. And as we know, XRP lost over 60% of its value. What's kind of suspicious to me is where do you think a lot of that money that was in XRP went to? It had to go somewhere, and I can't imagine it all went back into fiat. So, I mean, that's just another thing that's very sketchy about, the entire case.
Did you say they went into USD from Bitcoin?
No. So that firm bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin
in USD. Okay.
Yeah, a couple months before this case dropped. And then he goes and now, he's associated with One River Asset Management and stuff. And,
Yeah, it's shady. He's going to be able to disclose that. He's going to, he's going to be able to shine a light on it now. And then the judge is going to be asking questions. If at the worst case here, it's very bad optics, very bad for the SEC. And it's only going to lead more people to dig into other things. And then you start digging into Tenero and this one and that one. I'm just saying there's a lot of possible corruption there with Hinman and Clayton. It's going to come out. And, this case was brought. There was no reason to charge Brad and Chris. And there was no reason that this should have been called a digital security right now. Those two things were way over the top. And now they're getting busted for it. This is what allows the community and John Deaton to intervene, is the fact that they're trying to say the security now, but then they don't want to answer it. So it's just frustrating as XRP holders that we had to deal with this incompetent regulatory agency that's able to bring this. But hopefully we have fair judges and they will, do the right thing and they'll see the facts. The facts are the facts.
Yeah, so far they have, Netburn and Torres, I feel good about.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like they ask pertinent questions. They're not like pressing the matter by any means, but I think that's all a part of being a judge, is letting the facts come out over time. So, I'm hopeful with them too, at least so far. Hopefully it keeps up that way.
All right, so let's go through some people asking about the Flare launch. So we haven't had any word. They're going through a security audit right now in the middle of basically the biggest bull run ever and the biggest market expansion. So they already had their one security audit like in 2019 for the beginning of building Flare, but now this is like the second one with Spark and the Flare Time Series Oracle and the F asset system. So it's been slow go. They can only control that as much as they can. But also we need to keep in mind here, June 11th was when the claim is up. So I never saw Flare going live before that date anyway, because you need to, when the claim is up, then they'll have an exact amount of how much is going in the general rewards pools and how many people are getting. So it's never going to go live before that. I would expect a lead up of information and stuff beforehand. So I think there would be at least like a month or so before we get more information. But seeing a few dominoes fall here with Dell Chain, Deltec Bank, and now we got the news of standard custody coming out today. That's going to, I think, play a role there with Flare 2. I didn't go too much into the video, but as I thought of it more and more, of course they're going to play a role. They're like the crypto bank, basically, for all things in the XRP ecosystem, and they'll be part of Bitcoin and other ecosystems, too. So standard custody isn't going to be just XRP, but it will probably be XRP-centric. Similar to how, think of how Bitrue and Uphold operate. They're XRP-centric. But they also do other things. And I could see standard custody and PolySign in general doing that. But they'll probably focus more on the bigger assets and a smaller amount of them.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they're going to go for the ones that are going to offer them the most value to custody. Obviously, that's going to rake them in the most fees, or I don't know exactly how their business model is structured yet. But
we don't
know.
Yeah.
They have some kind of management fee or something of that nature.
Yeah, so standard custody looks like the regulated entity. Then you got PolySign is kind of like the tech platform. It says escrow and settlement platform. So that's going to be doing a lot of the settlement. It's probably already live within RippleNet. So they had a complex, comprehensive review of all the technology and the whole processes behind the scenes. So obviously they're already live in some capacity within RippleNet that they've been using. Now that they have this trust charter, they're at the level Bakkt is at. Let's put it that way. Bakkt, Fidelity have the same type of trust charter that now standard custody has. Ripple has the the virtual currency license, basically the BIT license in New York. But they're not a trust charter. They're just a money service provider with FinCEN. So that is different. And now, Patty, Luke, where is it? Luke, what I found 07 asked, will there be other ways to stake XRP if big exchanges relist XRP or not? I don't know what that exactly means.
If they do, I could see scenarios where exchanges are going to plug into Flare Network and, earn the yield for people. So, maybe they'll offer some fixed rate of 10% and you can just stake it there. And then they do all the behind the scenes work basically and pay you out that 10% for whatever your value is. I definitely think we'll see some exchange eventually get into action like that on Flare. Now, the question is that really your best course of action? Personally, I wouldn't be looking to stake with an exchange that's interacting on Flare Network. I'd much rather, get down in the weeds and do everything on the chain directly, because that's where the most rewards are to be had. Whatever the exchange offer you in staking, just know that they're probably ripping your eyes out behind the scenes with what kind of yield they're making off your assets. So.
Yeah, that's going to be the least profitable. Excuse me. So Aaron M. asked, to me, the initial Spark snapshot was some game theory from Ripple and Flare to get some nice XRP price appreciation before the inevitable lawsuit they knew was coming. So I don't know if I necessarily agree on that all the way, because I don't know if they knew that lawsuit was necessarily 100% coming. That was happening with what Flare was doing and with what basically this airdrop was doing. Has nothing to do with Ripple. Only that XRP holders, are going to receive Spark. It did seem to push the price up, but the whole market was starting to move at that time. I think that was happening no matter what, if there was a lawsuit or not. This guy, Clayton, just seemed to drop it at the end on his last day. It seems like Ripple left the negotiating tables, and he just like dropped it out of nowhere. Ripple did seem surprised. Was that just their act, or was that legit? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think Flare and Spark airdrop was planned all along, regardless what was happening. That's just my opinion. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Patty?
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with the SEC case. I think that was the timeline for when Flare was ready to start getting this going. They wanted to allow ample time for people to learn about Flare as they release information, as the community kind of started talking about it. So them having that snapshot on the 12th of December last year, that gives people 6 months for any kind of self-custody wallets to claim until June 11th, which is coming up here in a month. So, I think it was just a matter of, giving a lot of time for word to spread about the network. If they sprang this up a month before it launched, I think a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable enough to use it because they wouldn't have enough time to digest information on this. It's a little different than some of these other DeFi networks for sure, which is why, part of the reason we're so excited. Obviously, they're, running on distributed ledger technology using like FBA and Avalanche. And then the minting process for bringing assets on and off is like totally different than wrapping. So there's just a lot of new things. And it's definitely taken us some time to absorb. I'm still like, as we read through it, we find new things that we didn't realize originally. So yeah, I think they just realized that it was going to take a long time to absorb, and they just want to get ahead of the curve with it.
Yeah, I think so. That's why they started early. Here's a good question from KSpec1515. He goes, could PolySign be the Fed Reserve to digital asset custody? So how I look at that is a little different. Like, for example, the escrowed XRP is custodied by the XRP ledger. It's in an escrow. When it gets released from there, though, that's where it could go to some type of... I would think it would go to some kind of smart contracts. I don't think PolySign is an entity like the Fed. I don't think they could be compared in the same way where it's like a centralized entity, the Fed, and then there's the PolySign. The PolySign is a private blockchain. So that is kind of different than the Fed just in its design. But I think it could be distributed through some type of smart contract network or crypto conditions network on top of PolySign based on certain conditions that are met where it's released to, depending on how they set it up. But yeah, I think PolySign's platform could be used in that way, possibly, to distribute something of the escrow with XRP, but the escrow itself is not custodied by PolySign. It can never be. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess like right now, how I'm viewing PolySign is they're looking like they might become kind of like the alphabet to like Google, how it's kind of like that parent company above it that not a lot of people are going to be familiar with, maybe other than us who are really into this. But they're not going to necessarily be like super consumer facing or anything like that. They'll be providing all that like infrastructure behind the scenes. And like standard custody is probably something we'll get a lot more familiar with, especially as they start providing like services on different blockchains and things like that.
All right. So we got a good question here from Frank Sperano. Will you be grandfathered into the initial interest rates on Flare for staking it if the rates change? All right, so let's just break down that a little. You delegate your vote from Flare to earn more. You delegate your vote from your Spark tokens to a signal provider who earns the rewards from the Flare Time Series Oracle. That rate is 10% for the first 6 months. It's 10% of the 10 billion, of the 100 billion. So that's 10 billion will come out for the first year, but for 6 months of that, it's 5 billion, right, Patty?
Yeah, so it could change.
3 million a month
will
be released. That's set now for your Spark. That's the most, so depending on how much participation there is. So it's not necessarily the rate. The rate is the same for the FTSO. The participation is what's going to depend on how much you get. If there's more participation, then there's more that has to be spread out. But there's, I think it was 27 million a day is coming out of Spark. So here's an interesting stat that I thought that we should bring up with Ethereum. Ethereum's miners earned in revenue 1.5 billion last month in just gas fees and mining. Now, think of all those rewards that are going to go to people on Flare instead of to just entities that secure the blockchain and charge gas fees. Now you're able to use that inflation instead of just rewarding those miners for all these things. That goes back to the people who own Spark tokens. So all this value, those miners just dump that to pay for their electricity. So it comes right back on the market. With Flare and the way to design the market mechanisms and the design, those rewards are going to go to people who are participating. And as they earn that Spark, they know that Spark will then earn them more Spark. So they have a reason to hold the Spark. Where in Ethereum, you earn more Ethereum, doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't give you a claim or rights to earn more Spark, where it will on Flare. And then you have the general rewards pools. So that's for minting F assets. That's a set rate that comes out of that rewards pool, which is going to be 20 to 25 billion Spark, which will be part of that 100 billion supply. Now, the percentage rate that comes out, if it's 0.1% per day or 0.2% per day, is up to the governance. Now, that gets released, and once again, it's based on the participation of the amount of dollar value of F assets that are brought to Flare networks. That's how that breaks down. We don't know if it's going to be 0.1%, 0.2%, 0.3%, but it'll happen every day and be released. And if you have 1,000 Doge or you have 100 XRP, it's whatever the dollar value of your assets based on everyone else's dollar value of their F assets is what you'll get.
Yeah. And basically, in short, like, especially in the early going, so I'll just go with the first 6 months, you're not going to find any fixed interest rates anywhere. So I know, like, everybody wants to get like a specific APY amount, and it depends extremely, like Mickey was saying, on participation.
Yeah,
you could be in there for a couple days with F assets minted when people haven't caught on the train yet, and you could earn ludicrous amounts of Spark. If there's only like 50 million F assets minted on the first day. But, as soon as we start moving up into the billions, essentially, then it's going to get like a more like normal yield just by virtue of, more people sharing the same pot amount, basically.
Mm-hmm. You know what you can do, though? I mean, your FXRP is going to earn one type of yield. You could still put that FXRP somewhere to just earn steady yield and still simultaneously earn that Spark. So that's what's great about these assets. Like, Spark could still be used somewhere else too to get steady yield and still earn more Spark. So these things are being able to use twice in a simultaneous way. So I think that's just important to note. So you could have set yield here, and then you have variable yield on how much Spark you're earning, and you're trusting nobody for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, basically all the F assets in Spark are going to have opportunities to earn yield, 2 income streams at once, especially in the beginning. Now, like, as we see stuff like, let's say, use the Flare Farm Pool to, get YFIN, eventually that will run out or, become a lot less. So, after a while there, maybe there'll be other, basically products that you can get into to keep earning that yield, or like, the F asset rewards pool is starting to get low. But, at that point, it's going to be a couple of years down the line. And we're already seeing how many things are starting to pop up on Flare, and we're still at least 2 months from launch. So there's going to be a lot more in the future. And that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. So we got a question here. K-Spec 1515, always asking good questions. Can you explain the difference between Flare smart contracts, hooks, and smart contracts and Codius? That's a tough one because it's a little more complex. So Flare smart contracts are Ethereum-based smart contracts. So everything that you could do on Ethereum is going to be able to be done in a locked network. So they're only able to be done on real Ethereum. But things like Trustline actually incorporates the XRP ledger. And just like our claim to our Spark is attached to our XRP account address. And the same goes for minting your F assets. You mint them on Ethereum, on Flare in Ethereum smart contract, but it's tied back to your account on the XRP ledger. Like, you have your claim to get those back. Now, it's a locked-in approach for Flare Finance, for Trustline, of those DeFi protocols. With XRP hooks is more of like light smart contracts just on the ledger. Kind of like a step up from escrow, Patty, right? For the most part with hooks. I mean, it's the best way to say that. And we don't know if that's 100% going through yet. that's going to be amendment. So I don't want to go too deep into that. With Codius now, Codius is the most versatile because it's really just a hosting protocol, and it could be configured in any type of way. It could be used to create private blockchain, like PolySign, for example, and the different hosts could all be validators as part of a network and use multi-sig and different crypto conditions. Or it could be part of a bigger open network, and it could use any type of virtual machine. It could use any type of smart contracts. It's really how it's configured and for what reason. Codius has just many different use cases. Is it going to be used by signal providers to just host smart oracles? Is it going to be used by Flare nodes to just host Flare nodes? I mean, your guess is as good as mine. It can be used in all types of ways. I see PolySign using it in more as a proprietary way, and RippleNet using it in a proprietary type of way that conforms to their use cases, because they compare it to ACH and payment systems. It allows smart contracts and crypto conditions, which is like kind of light smart contracts on top of all these different ledgers. So it's not tied to one blockchain only, but it does use the consensus from underneath the blockchains. I know that sounds confusing, but it basically runs atop over them. And it's part of Interledger, really. And those hosts have to be paid. So it depends how they're going to work. If they're in a private blockchain, you could create something like a Corda just for a specific use case in a settlement network, kind of what PolySign's doing.
Yeah, and I mean,
I think it's complementary to all of them. They really are.
Yeah, there's different use cases, and it's like, eventually, like, if so much, value's running on these different blockchains or ledgers, then, they're going to need to, like, kind of do some of the calculations and the whole computing, power in other areas. And, Codius offers a great option for that, to do stuff like not directly on the blockchain all the time. So, we'll have to see how that turns out. I mean, from what I could tell, it seems like Interledger basically, like, going full scale is going to need to happen before Codius is, like, instituted in a way. So I feel like we're a ways off, but it is nice to know that that's still being worked on after a lot of debate for a while on that.
Yep. All right. So Joshua Vanderplatz asks, good question here. Mickey, when Flare goes live, what does your average day look like managing this? Is this like part-time job to keep track of? ? So let's break this down into the steps. So day one, when this goes live, it's only going to be Spark. There's going to be no Flare Finance. There's going to be no F assets on day one. You're only going to be able to do one thing, which is delegate your Flare time series Oracle vote to a signal provider to earn more Spark, because that FTSO inflation mechanism starts on day one. As soon as the network's up, that thing's pumping out 27 million Spark a day, no matter how many people participate. So that's why you want to be early there, because that 27 million Spark is coming out every day on day one. Now, the F asset system will start shortly after. We don't know exactly, but basically you could set your Spark to be auto-delegated. As you earn more Spark, it could be just auto-delegated with that signal provider. So that's automation. That makes it very easy. So therefore, it's not a part-time job in that aspect. The next step would be minting your F assets. Well, actually, before that, it would be staking your Spark while you're simultaneously delegating your FTSO votes. So we got to see that process then. So as your Spark is staked, it just stays there and it's auto-delegating. So those things can be automated in a way. The next step then would be minting your F assets. Now that's something you'll probably have to do manually, because you'll have to decide how much of your XRP, your Doge, XLM, or Litecoin do you want to mint as F assets. You do have to pay a fee there. But on the back end, your Spark that's staked is earning part of that fee. So you look at it like that. So you pay your fee, you bring it over, you earn your daily Spark. That should happen in an autonomous way, where it should just be released to you daily, but we don't know exactly. Where this becomes a part-time job, Josh, is when you start utilizing it then in the DeFi ecosystem while doing all this too. So if you could set this up to be kind of automated, where your Spark's just automatically getting auto-delegated back, now you have time to go, okay, Flare Finance goes live 3-4 weeks later. Now you could put some FXRP in Liquidity Pool, some in Flare Farm, some in Flare Loans, some in Trustline. It's all up to you how far you want to spread yourself and manage it. And hopefully there'll be aggregating services that will make some of this easier. exchanges will offer, hey, just stake your Spark with us and we'll do everything for you. So there will be those out there that will make it easier, but they're also going to take a bigger cut from your potential yield. So it really depends on how broad you want to go out in the DeFi ecosystem. So there's different levels of where you want to go. I would say starting just at the protocol layer should be fairly easy and shouldn't be a full-time job. So moving it into DeFi protocols then and doing that, that's when it starts becoming a little more managing. But you can set yourself up to where it's pretty much just check once or twice a day. I would suggest that doing the decentralized applications on a browser and a laptop or computer is better than doing them on your phone. They just seem to be designed for that when you're dealing with the applications. So compared to mobile phones. All right. But you should be able to do them on mobile phone too. But some of the applications, I think the interfaces, Patty, are better to do on a laptop or a computer.
I mean, yeah, I just find it easier to look at a big screen
with
and
an interface,
be clicking around. There, you just have more functionality through a computer than your phone. But one of the things, what I'll add to that that was a good overview of it right there. So I mean, like, you don't have to make it a part-time job. Like, you can just stop at using, the first 3 steps that Mickey did. Like, you may be fine with what you're earning there, and you don't want to deal with this all the time. So, like, it's going to definitely be like on your risk profile, how much time you have to dedicate to this, and things like that. But I mean, keeping, your ears down to the grindstone is going to be helpful as, we're just going to see more and more products launch. So, you're probably going to have a lot of opportunities, especially if Flare takes off, just like in people using it basically, and demand driving for Spark. You're just going to see a lot of new projects move on by nature of there being value here. Like, the projects are going to find where the value is. All the value's on Ethereum right now, so these projects are popping up on Ethereum to get a piece of that action. So, if people are going to, start using Flare, then you're going to see a similar thing. So it probably could be worth it more to, pay more attention and try and take advantage of those situations. Like, just sitting here like at the beginning with Flare Finance, we have an opportunity to get YFIN, which is going to be the main governance token, and you can use it in governance staking to earn guaranteed yield on Flare Finance. Also, the supply is 11,000 tokens, so it's extremely low. And, if you've seen what's happened with like MakerDAO or the Yearn Finance token and stuff, those are lower caps, and their, value has skyrocketed as those platforms are being used. So like, those are opportunities that you can get into. And as other DeFi projects launch, you may have that opportunity, but you kind of, you got to pay enough attention to know what's going on. But, if you're making money, I feel like you'll be more invested in it, especially if it's going well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So Josh has a follow-up question. Where is it here? He goes, your Patreon group going to help us learn if we want to take this on as a part-time job? So yes. So basically that's what I'm going to be doing too. So part-time job is Patreon, YouTube, and all that. And the other part-time job is going to be managing, everything that's going on there at Flare, because I want to maximize as much yield as I can out of there, but at the same time, not go overboard with risk. But it does depend on where XRP is here. If XRP is at $10, my strategy changes of how I'm going to go about things on Flare than if it stays at $1.50. And I think it would for most. It opens up new opportunities. You could take more risks with certain value. So yeah, to do that, it does take kind of a part-time job to maximize it. And that's what we specifically do there in Patreon, is focus on all different type of strategies. So we're ready for this. And then we'll share with what we do. And we've created some spreadsheets Patty's created and formulas that will make it easy for you to make a decision based on what you can expect to earn in profits for the amount of money that you do value that you use. Because you're not investing any money here. You're just utilizing value that you already have. And I think that's important. You can invest your own money. And I'm not a financial advisor. But a lot of this is being done with the assets you hold already. FXRP, XLM, Doge, Litecoin, and Spark, which you're getting for basically free if you had XRP on December 12th. And now you're just putting that value to work. How best can you put it to work without, risking too much of it? And how much value do we have? And there's going to be so many different options on how to go about this and combinations that I think it will just go into a really far way, because since these assets can be used simultaneously in 2 places, it exponentially adds to the different combinations that can be set up. So you could set yourself up with multiple signal providers. You could set yourself up going with multiple different DeFi protocols, multiple different F assets, and doing all types of things. Now Trustline opens up the XRP ledger then to do things back on there. What other application? I think there's going to be a whole slew of applications that are built on top of everything here. Because what do we know so far, Patty? Let's name what we know so far on the applications on Flare. We know Flare Finance, right, with their whole 6 products. We know of Trustline, which has the decentralized bank, and
signal providers are a way to earn.
Signal providers,
yeah.
And we got the F assets, and we got Gala is another application. So Flare Finance I kind of rushed over because that has 2 tokens with it too. So that's kind of important. I think that's of interest to people to get a hold of those assets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just by nature of them having lower supply and looking at some of the other like DeFi blockchains like Ethereum and just kind of comparing over there, if the Flare takes off in a similar sense, obviously getting in on them early is the best way to get price appreciation, and then also earn yield with them on top of that. So.
Exactly. And now another new one is Gala's coming out. So I know community's really been interested in that, and that's something I'm looking into too. And Patty's doing some research, so we'll probably cover that in a video in the near term. Maybe try and even get the guy on for an interview who's charged of Gala, because I know many in the community are running nodes with Gala, and they're kind of building an ecosystem kind of like, from what my understanding is from Decentraland, where there'll be NFTs that you could buy actually in-game. So I like that concept. I think they're starting out as one of the starting assets on Flare. It's just going to give value. So something to keep an eye on. Like everyone keeps saying in the chat, YFin has a very low supply. Yes. So 11,000 and 4,000 will be mined from yield farming in the first year. So out of that 11,000 supply, 4,000 will be available out of yield farming for the first year. So that's why you want to get your hands on YFin early, because the majority of the supply is going to be distributed that first year. And I think after 3 years, it's fully distributed.
Yeah, and you can get guaranteed yield in the governance staking platform with the APY cloud on Flare Finance, which is going to be really interesting to see how that turns out, just because it's like a dynamic yield aggregating service. So, the governance will set a minimum APY for the year and a maximum APY. And if you're in the governance staking pool, there's mechanisms to guarantee you that minimum yield. So I think that's really exciting, and having YFin, if it's, high value, plus you're getting guaranteed yield on it, that looks really nice to me in the future as an option.
So Rippler asked, do you think the prices of different assets will drive use cases for one versus the other? That's an interesting question.
I mean, I would say definitely. I think like Ethereum, the price of Ethereum being high definitely drives new tokens and platforms to come onto that blockchain. So, we could bring this over on Flare. So basically, we're going to have all these F assets, and in order to mint them, Spark's going to have to be locked as collateral. So that's going to reduce the supply. Also, the demand's going up because more Sparks needed as more value of these F assets comes on. So like those are kind of these assets, like the Litecoin, XRP, Stellar, Dogecoin, those are going to start moving, or Spark will kind of follow them. So like if value leaves the network, then you don't need as much Spark and collateral. So that kind of unlocks it to be sold on the open market, which increases supply. So price generally tends to go down when that happens. So, I mean, I think we'll see a lot of correlation with these assets, and they'll probably start feeding off of each other, like basically looking at Flare with the attachment of these, or the integration with these other blockchains and ledgers. It's, it's kind of like its own flywheel effect. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think we'll see that as we keep going.
Okay. So just to add to that, one thing that's interesting here, that's important to know, typically on these smart contract blockchains, to get value on them, you either have the native token or you spin up different decentralized application tokens, right? That's where the value comes from. And typically many of them are proof of stake. So you have to lock your tokens then in these different protocols like Chainlink and others. You got to stake them. So you can't really use them because they're built on their own DApp, ecosystems. And that's like why Flare, why Fin, and the Trustline Credit Network token and Gala. Those are great, but with Flare, you have the F assets. So these are already established value in the trillions. You have Litecoin, you have XRP, you have Doge, and you have XLM, and we'll have Bitcoin soon too. So that's the big value token. So people are already holding these, looking for something to do with them. So utilizing them on Flare, you have that incentive because you'll get yield just for bringing it there, and then you can utilize it too. So that gives Flare a little of an advantage. And then Spark doesn't have to be staked in a way to secure the network. So it frees up the token to be rewarded to people who are not just miners or validators. And that frees up the usability of the network. And then what Patty was saying, add to that is composability. So like using Gala token in the Flare Finance, Flare X, and the yield farming, that is composability. They all then integrate with each other. The F assets will already be integrated with all the Flare Finance stuff. So they'll be composable into Flare Finance. So that's what that word means. You'll hear a lot more of that with DeFi and the smart contract platforms. Just like as the RA stablecoin, when it's issued on Flare, can be used on the XRP ledger. And it also might be able to be used on Flare Finance in the liquidity pools and in other Flare loans, for example. It could be used over there. So that's the composability, which will push the usability of these assets and value up. I think Spark, though, will kind of, what was the word we used before? Will be correlated with XRP price. Not necessarily their value be the same, but as XRP kind of goes up, I think Flare will kind of move with it, which is healthy for the whole F asset system. You don't want them to be too divergent from each other since they're using one as collateral. The more correlated they are, the better. So that's something I think we'll see just naturally. When it comes to the value of Spark, it's, the way it's designed on paper, it looks really good, really good. But we got to see it in action first. And I don't want to make any set predictions on that until we see it. Once we do see it in action and the demand for it and people earning money, when people see other people earning money and the price is not going up, but they're earning money, it draws attention. So it's going to be a second wave for everyone who came into crypto. They're starting to realize, hey, this yield thing, this DeFi, we can earn yield. It's going to really blow up as DeFi gets more secure and safer and easier to use with smaller amounts of money. On Ethereum, you got to use some big money to really handle all the gas fees. You can't just go in there with like $200-300 and try to play around. You need a couple thousand at least to play around on Ethereum DeFi. Right, Patty?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, Flare's going to have much lower gas fees. The transaction times are going to be so much faster. So I think there's just a lot to like from a retail perspective and, increasing that financial inclusion into DeFi for sure. Which is like, basically what DeFi was started for, was to include like all levels of capital. So
yeah, and Ben brings up a good point. Since Spark needs to be used as collateral for these F assets coming over, so I know for XRP, it's 2.5 times. Hugo hinted that Litecoin might be 2 times. We don't know, and that's all subject to governance changing in the future. But still, it's a lot of Spark that has to be staked, but that staked Spark could still participate in the Flare Time Series Oracle too, and earn those underlying assets. So you're earning XRP and earning LTC. Those are rare things to earn. It's very rare to earn other big cryptos with a native token of a network. That's brand new. So that really ups the game in what you'll be able to do. And I think the market will take time to really acknowledge Flare and understand it. So that's why there's opportunity for us who are already receiving Spark to take advantage of that early on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Joseph's got one for you.
Okay.
Patty.
Can you I missed the airdrop, but plan to move my assets to Flare while I receive free Spark, or will I have to buy? Yeah, so I mean, all you have to do is, I'll let's just say you have XRP, Joseph. If you mint it into FXRP, you have to pay a creation fee. It's not totally decided. At most, it would be 5%. And then you will start receiving the Spark airdrop daily for holding an F asset. So all you have to do is mint F assets and then hold them, or you can use them in some product as well. And you're going to receive that like daily free Spark. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unfortunate some people that didn't have on, those days. But there's been a long time XRP holders. So in a way, this is a reward for us because we get to be part of this Spark ecosystem in Flare without having to invest money out of pocket. We're able to use our XRP, and we have this new asset that we're given, and we'll be receiving in an allocation that's over 2 to 3 years released to us. So we'll be part of it no matter what. The question is, will people be able to sell their whole allocation at once when network launches? That's possible, since you'll have the whole claim on the whole allocation. Some people might be willing to sell. I don't know if there'll be a market for that, but something to keep in mind to look towards in the future. So, minting fees as far as energy and gas fees.
Oh, he's asking if depending on if you're minting like FLTC versus FXRP or FXLM.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, if you're bringing, say, Litecoin over, right? So you would have to send your Litecoin.
So you're still subject to that transaction fee. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you would still be subject to it. I don't think Litecoin's too bad on transaction fees compared to Bitcoin.
None of them are that. Yeah.
No, XLM's extremely cheap, and I don't know about Doge. Honestly, never used. So
well, since it's close, it's like similar to Litecoin. I'm pretty sure their fees aren't that bad. I think that's like one of the reasons they've had the whole retail spike recently.
Mm-hmm. Well, Doge is something to bring up. I mean, that's going to be an F asset. I mean, that's a lot of. There's tens of billions of dollars in Doge now. As much as people want to joke about it, and it's negative and this or that, it's still a ton of value that when Flare goes live, they'll be able to unlock. So it just is what it is. I mean, whatever you think about it is fine, but it's still a lot of value that needs to be unlocked. So the more, the better, I think, for Flare Network. But it's also more competition for you with your XRP, because those people that bring over Doge now get a percentage of that Spark distribution every day. So there is a key there. All right, so Crypto Scott asks, we'll give this one to you, Patty.
Okay.
When you delegate, Crypto Scott asks, when you delegate Spark to a signal provider, is the reward ratio the same as the F asset daily reward? Good question.
Yeah, so it's not, and it's going to be dependent on a variety of factors. So personally, just from kind of like plotting this out over the past couple of months, I think that the F asset rewards pool is going to have a higher reward rate at the beginning. But as we start seeing multiple billions of dollars worth of F assets minted, it's going to flip over to the FTSO having a higher rate. So basically, this is going to have a lot to do with how many people are participating in the FTSO voting. If there's only like 20% of the Spark on a given day is participating, then you can earn a really large share of the reward because, you're getting 27 million delivered daily through the FTSO for the first 6 months. Then it's up to governance to change that, which, I imagine it could get changed, especially if Flare is starting to gain some steam. And then as far as the F asset rewards pool, it's basically, so if it's 0.1% from the general F asset rewards pool, if that's the daily release rate, it's going to be 20 million on the first day and then decrease by a very small amount each day going forward. But obviously, if it's 0.2%, then that's 40 million, which is more than the FTSO is delivering. So, it's very much dependent on assumptions. That's why, we're kind of trying to work on a spreadsheet to do different scenarios. So, like, as we see those scenarios play out, then you can get an idea of what's going on.
So, New York Hostage asks a great question. Sounds like my situation. New York. I feel like a New York Hostage sometimes, too. That's a great name. So, how do you know which signal provider to delegate to? This is a good question. As of right now, it's hard to say, but there will be different factors that you could look at to see who you would want to delegate to. Now, one is their commission rate. How much of a fee? The last question. All right. This is the last question we're going to take. So how do you know which signal provider to delegate to? So you would know what commission fee they take. So say it will be 3%, some will be 10%, some will be maybe 20% is high. Now, you also want to know how accurate they are. And now that's hard to know right off the gate. So you could split up your delegating of your votes to different signal providers, and you could move them per day. So you could easily switch. Okay, I want to send half to this signal provider today, half to that one. The next day you want to take it all from there and put it to a new signal provider. So you can move them daily out. All right. Now, there's another aspect to this. There's your F assets come with voting power. So some signal providers might want more voting power. So you don't get necessarily a compensation for your FTSO votes that come with your FXRP, but it gives you extra voting power, which the signal providers might want. So they could package in certain types of things like, well, the amount of votes you get, maybe you get a discount on your commission rate for. So I think there'll be those type of deals out there, and we have to look for that. But yeah, I would say the commission rate and the accuracy and the ability for auto delegation. So I think that's something that appeals to, like me, for example, and I'm sure many of you, that as you earn that spark, you're not going to get the reward from the signal provider. It's going to bypass the signal provider and go right to your wallet. So even if your spark is staked in a smart contract in the F asset system, the votes you're delegating would go to signal provider, and then the earnings of the rewards would just go automatically to your wallet and bypass them. So that's something really interesting. So you don't have to trust somebody then paying you out. So I like that aspect because it removes a trust that you don't have with the signal provider, and you're not obligated to go with them continuously. You could pull out your delegation of votes to another one the next day. So in the beginning, I think, it's really going to depend on how they market this. I think some are going to want your spark too, and they're going to say, hey, stake it with us and do this, and maybe you get no commission. So we got to see how they market it. It's really too hard to tell. Patty, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, other than I do have a blog on the website that kind of goes over a scenario where you use different signal providers with different success rates and fees, and just kind of how that looks as far as how you fare between them. I mean, personally, I'm going to diversify out the gate, and I'm probably going to look for firms that are, or groups that are more sophisticated doing it. So, I'm going to have to look at what their current work product is. What do they have out there to try and make a decision like that? But as we get more information about them, we're definitely going to update stuff on the website, and you can go there and see a list of signal providers currently. I need to make a couple updates as I think some new ones have popped up. But you guys can check that out at the DeFiStandard.com, and you can start looking at websites of these signal providers to get a feel for it. And yeah, we'll just have to see. I mean, I think they're all going to have like different marketing strategies and offers for people. So maybe using one signal provider is more beneficial for a certain person than others. We'll just have to see. But there's definitely going to be like an open marketplace for it, and it's going to be full of competition. I imagine over the long haul that these, all these signal providers are going to get pretty good at doing this as, just as they have more experience and everything. So I feel like the rates will start to even out over time, or the success rates rather. Especially they're all pulling from similar places. So I don't think their feeds are going to be off from each other by that much to where, unless somebody really doesn't know what they're doing, they're going to all have like decent success rates.
Mm-hmm. All right. I just wanted to I'm not touching on the tax thing. It's not something we talk about here, but I just wanted to touch on that. You'll probably most likely have a claim on the entire allocation where you receive. So even though you're only receiving 15%, you're entitled, you have a claim to that entire allocation. You own it. So technically, if you wanted to, you could sell that whole allocation. So even though it's being distributed to you on a monthly basis, it's already yours. You have possession of the whole allocation at launch. So that's just, I'm going to leave it at that. That's what we're told by Flare. They went through guidance. You could take that for what it is, but you need to know that and understand that technical aspect to be able to explain that to your professional who you go to on those things. And that is not me, because I'm not a financial advisor or an accountant or a tax attorney, but I just want, everyone should know the technicals there, and it's the only thing I'm going to talk about with that. All right. On that note, I think we're going to be out, Patty.
Yep.
Great job.
Happy
Thanks.
Star Wars Day, everybody.
Yeah.
And happy birthday to Lantern again.
Yes, happy birthday, Lantern. Dale, great job on the intro.
Yeah. I'm glad we added an extra minute. I needed more last time. So
Yeah, we added an extra minute for this one. Yeah, great questions today. It always gets off a little slow with the questions, but really good questions, everyone. And thank you. And we'll be doing 2 to 3 live streams every week now leading up. And then in June, we'll probably be doing more. But for the next couple of weeks, there'll be 2 to 3 a week. All right, everyone.
Once we launch.
Yeah, and then once we
make it crazy, we'll see.
Exactly. We got some good ideas coming out for that. All right, I'm Mickey B. Fresh.
I'm
And
PattyXRP. Oh.
No. And we're out.